It's kind of funny when you think about it.
Yeah.
This whole question of does God exist? It's like been around forever.
Oh, yeah, since the dawn of, well, since people could even think about stuff like that.
Yeah,
Like, yeah.
exactly. But the thing is, it's not just some, philosophical debate that people have in dusty libraries.
Right,
It's
right.
like it shaped everything: wars, art, how we view the world, the whole shebang.
Absolutely.
So for this deep dive, we're going to be using the God question. Arguments for and against belief is our
Hmm.
main source, kind of like our roadmap.
Excellent source.
Yeah, and we're not here to like pick a winner or anything.
Yeah, no.
It's more about like really getting into the arguments, seeing the logic or the experiences behind each side of the debate.
I think what's really fascinating about this topic is that it really forces us to confront the limits of what we can actually know. Can we really prove or disprove something as massive as the concept of God?
That's such a good point. Like, it really is a head scratcher, and I think that's what makes this whole discussion so interesting.
Yeah.
So, just to make sure we're all on the same page here,
Yeah.
we're going to be mainly looking at three main perspectives. Theism, so that's the belief in God; atheism, belief that there is no God; and agnosticism, the belief that we just can't know for sure.
The big three.
Exactly, the big three. And get this, we'll even be getting into this argument that uses straight up logic to try and prove God exists.
Oh, yeah, that one, the ontological argument. That's a fun one.
Yeah, we'll get to that. And of course, we can't skip over the classic problem of evil.
Right.
If God is all good, all powerful, why is there so much suffering?
Huge question.
It's a big one. So yeah, buckle up. Things are about to get, well, pretty deep.
They are. But what's fascinating is as we get into these arguments, we'll see how both sides actually use reason, use observations, and sometimes even personal experiences to build their cases.
That's so true.
Really highlights how complex this whole thing really is.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So let's kick things off with the folks who say, yep, there's definitely a God.
Okay.
One of the, I guess, oldest arguments they use is this thing called the cosmological argument.
Right.
And it's kind of like, imagine the universe as a watch, right?
Yeah.
Super intricate, complex.
It's the watchmaker argument,
Yeah,
essentially.
exactly. A watch needs a watchmaker, someone to design it, build it.
Someone to set it in motion.
So their thinking is, well, the universe must need a creator too, and that's God.
It's a classic analogy.
Like, think of guys like Thomas Aquinas. He was all about this idea.
Oh, yeah. Big proponent.
But here's where I kind of get tripped up.
Mm-hmm.
Even if we say, okay, there needs to be a first cause, something to get it all started.
Yeah.
Does it have to be the God that people worship? Couldn't it be something else entirely? Some, I don't know, some force or entity we don't even have a name for yet.
I think you've hit on one of the key critiques of that argument right there, that it makes a leap.
It does, right?
Yeah, it makes a leap from saying there needs to be a first cause to concluding that cause is the God of, of religious belief.
Yeah.
It assumes that this God then has all these specific qualities that different religions ascribe to him,
Right.
which is a whole other can of worms.
And a whole other discussion. Exactly. Okay, so moving on then. Another big argument for God's existence is the teleological argument.
Okay.
And this one is all about design. Like, think about the human eye.
Amazing, isn't it?
It's incredible. The way it works is just so complex.
Yeah.
Or how ecosystems like balance themselves out. It's mind-blowing.
Oh, absolutely.
So folks who support this teleological argument, they say, hey, this kind of complexity points to a designer.
Yeah, like a blueprint, right?
Exactly, just like a watch points to a watchmaker.
Right.
And for them, that designer is God.
William Paley, in his book Natural Theology,
Oh, wow.
he really went all in on this argument. He was basically like, look, the intricate design we see in nature, it's like it just screams purpose. And for him, purpose means there's got to be a designer behind it all, and that's God.
I can see why people find that argument compelling. Like, when you look at nature, it's easy to be like, whoa, this is too perfect to just be random chance.
Right.
But then we have this thing called evolution,
Right.
which explains how complex life forms can, come about through natural processes over a really, really long time.
Yeah.
So does that kind of, I don't know, undermine the need for a designer in that case?
Well, that's the heart of the debate, isn't it?
Right.
Evolution gives us a natural explanation for the complexity we see in the world, so it does challenge this idea that you need a supernatural designer to make sense of it all.
Yeah.
But there are folks who'd say, well, hold on, maybe evolution itself is part of God's design, like a tool that he used to bring about all this diversity of life.
Whoa, okay, so that's adding another layer to it.
It does?
Okay, now let's move to an argument that feels very I don't know, personal to me. And it's the moral argument, and this one asks, where do our ideas of right and wrong even come from?
Yeah.
Like, can we be truly good without some sort of higher moral authority setting the standard?
That's a deep one.
It is, and Immanuel Kant was really into this idea.
Oh, yeah. He was all over it.
He believed that our innate sense of moral duty, like we just know some things are right and some things are wrong.
We feel it. Yeah.
Yeah, he thought that pointed to some higher moral law,
Yeah.
and that law must have a lawgiver, which is God.
Makes sense on the
Yeah.
surface.
Yeah, but what about people who do horrible things? If there's this divine lawgiver putting morality in us, why is there so much evil in the world?
Ah, see, you've just walked right into the problem of evil,
Oh.
which, as we mentioned, is maybe the most challenging argument against God's existence. And
Yeah.
we're going to get into that more in a bit.
Okay.
But to your point, some folks would say that free will, which is something God gave us, that's what allows for the possibility of evil.
So even if God instilled this sense of morality in us, we can choose to ignore it.
That's the argument.
I don't know, it's kind of a lot to process.
It is. It raises these big questions about, what is free will really, and how does that work with the idea of a God who's supposed to be all good?
Right. It's complicated.
Yeah.
Okay, before we jump into the arguments against God, I want to touch on one more argument for his existence.
Okay.
And this one is it's a mind bender. It really is. It's called the ontological argument.
Oh, the logic one.
Yes, and it basically says that the very idea of God as this perfect being means he has to exist.
It's about definition.
Yeah, because
Uh.
if God is perfect and existing is perfection, a perfect being can't not exist.
Yeah, it's like existence is part of the package deal of being perfect.
Right, but it's like, does logic even work that way?
I mean, it's a very clever argument.
It is.
It uses pure reason, to argue that this being greater than which nothing else can even be conceived of, that being must exist. Because existence is part of perfection.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. A lot of people find it unconvincing.
I do, yeah.
Because it's like trying to define God into existence.
It feels that way, yeah, like it's a word game almost.
A bit, yeah.
Okay, so now it's time to switch gears a bit.
Okay.
Let's look at some of the arguments against the existence of God.
All right.
And honestly, one of the hardest ones to wrap your head around, at least for me, is the problem of evil.
It's a tough one.
It is. It's like, if God is all-powerful and all good,
Yeah.
like we keep saying,
Yeah.
why is there so much suffering?
Right.
Why do bad things happen to good people? This question, I mean, it's been around for centuries. Philosophers, theologians, everyone's wrestled with it.
Oh, yeah. And William Rowe, he was a big voice in this debate.
Oh, yeah.
He argued that the sheer amount of pointless suffering in the world, it makes it really unlikely that an all-powerful, all-good God actually exists.
Yeah.
Some believers will offer explanations, like free will that we talked about, or it's all part of God's plan.
Right.
But for a lot of people, those answers just don't really satisfy.
They don't know. It's just hard to reconcile the idea of a loving God with all the pain we see all around us,
It's a difficult concept.
Yeah, and it's not just about suffering either. Science has come a long way.
It has.
And now it offers explanations for things that people used to attribute to God. Like, we have the Big Bang Theory to explain how the universe began. We have evolution to explain how life became so diverse. So does all that. Do these scientific advancements make the idea of God less necessary?
Well, the rise of science has definitely changed how we understand the universe, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I think for some people, science and religion, they can coexist. They see them as compatible.
Okay.
Like science explains the how things work, and religion explains the why.
I can see that.
But for others, science provides enough explanation. They don't need the idea of a divine creator.
Right. It feels like the more we learn through science, the less room there is for God.
That's a common perspective, but it is worth remembering that science focuses on observing, explaining the natural world.
That's true.
It doesn't really try to offer absolute answers on these bigger metaphysical questions like whether God exists or not.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so now I want to talk about this idea of the burden of proof.
Okay.
Atheists often argue that it's on believers to prove God exists.
Right.
Not on them to disprove it. It's like, you got to show me the evidence before I buy what you're selling.
Show me the receipts.
Yeah, exactly. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it raises some interesting questions about what even counts as valid evidence when we're talking about faith.
Right.
Does the fact that we don't have, solid empirical proof, does that automatically mean belief is wrong?
Yeah.
Or is faith based on a different kind of conviction, something beyond what science can verify?
It's like, can you even have evidence of something that's outside of our physical world?
Exactly.
It's tricky.
It is, and then you get into these logical challenges to the concept of God.
Right.
The classic one, can God create a rock so heavy that even he can't lift it?
Yeah, that one.
It's a paradox.
It is.
And it makes you wonder, does the idea of an all-powerful being, does that even make sense?
It really does make you think.
It does, and I think these paradoxes highlight the limits of our language, of our logic, when we're trying to define something as divine as God.
It's like we're using human tools to try and understand something that's maybe beyond human comprehension.
It could be, yeah.
And then finally, there's the fact that there are just so many different religions,
So many.
so many different beliefs about God.
Right.
If there's one true God, why are there so many different versions of him?
That's a big question.
Doesn't that suggest that maybe religion is more of a human thing, something we created, rather than this universal truth?
Well, the huge diversity of religious beliefs across cultures throughout history, it's definitely fascinating.
Yeah.
It suggests that our ideas about God are probably shaped by, our social and cultural backgrounds, what our needs are, how we understand the world.
So it's like maybe we're creating God in our own image, not the other way around.
It's a very thought-provoking idea, isn't it?
It is. It really is. Because if that's true, if God is something we created, what does that say about us as humans? About our need for meaning, our desire for something beyond just the physical world?
Profound questions.
Yeah, wow. So I think we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
Explored some pretty intense arguments on both sides of this whole God question.
Yeah.
We didn't try to pick a winner, but I hope this deep dive has at least given you some things to think about.
Food for thought.
Exactly. So what are your takeaways from all this? What really resonated with you?
I'd say don't stop here, Keep exploring this question, read more, think about it, talk to others, and see where your own journey of understanding takes you.
That's great advice. And I think even if we never find all the answers, just wrestling with these big questions can help us understand ourselves and the world around us a little bit better.
I think so too.
Yeah. All right, that's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me.
And keep those big questions coming.
Always.
See you next time.
See you later. Bye.